The Langford estate looked perfect from the outside. Marble floors, golden chandeliers, a silence so sharp it could cut through thought. But beneath that silence, something restless lived. Ethan Langford, the young billionaire CEO who built his empire on control, trusted no one, especially not maids who seemed too perfect, and Elena Brooks was exactly that kind of problem. She had arrived one rainy morning, her suitcase small, her voice smaller, within days. She moved through the mansion like a shadow with purpose. Floors gleamed, silverware sparkled, no fingerprints, no mistakes, no complaints. She refused tips with a polite smile and words that disarmed everyone. "Thank you, but I can't." To the staff, she was an angel. To Ethan, she was a question he needed answered. He had seen that same quiet once before. Years ago, another woman had cooked his meals, comforted him when his parents fought, whispered bedtime stories when no one else cared. And one night, she vanished along with everything in his father's safe. Since then, Ethan trusted nothing that looked pure. People like Elena didn't exist without reason. Perfection always hid something. From his office above the grand staircase, he often watched her on the security screens. The way she straightened already perfect chairs. The way she looked at sunlight like it was fragile. Something about her calm irritated him. To everyone else, Elena was invisible. But to Ethan Langford, she was the ghost of a truth he couldn't bury. And in that immaculate house beneath the crystal lights, he decided one thing. If she was pretending, he would find out. No one in the Langford estate yet knew it, but kindness was about to be tested in the coldest way possible. Ethan Langford was not a man who left things to chance. Control was his comfort, suspicion his armor, and Elena Brooks had just become his newest mystery. Late that night, in his glass-walled office overlooking the estate gardens, Ethan poured himself a drink and turned to his assistant, Lucas Reed, who had been with him long enough to read silence like a language. "She's too perfect," Ethan said flatly. "Too polite, too careful. I need to know what happens when no one's watching." Lucas hesitated. "You think she's stealing?" Ethan's eyes were cold. "I think she's acting." He lifted a small remote from the desk and clicked. 4 security feeds appeared on the giant screen, showing the dining hall, the grand staircase, the west corridor, and the living room. Every corner of the Langford estate glowed in sterile precision. "She works like she's afraid of the air itself," Ethan continued. "But I don't trust fear that quiet. I want proof. Not her words, her instincts." Lucas frowned, uneasy. "You're setting a trap for her." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "No, I'm setting the truth free." The plan was simple, ruthless, effective. The next afternoon, the mansion would look just as it always did. Flawless, polished, asleep in its own pride. But in the living room, sunlight would fall perfectly across the coffee table, where Ethan would leave a collection of temptation. His black leather wallet, his Patek Philippe watch, and a neat stack of $100 bills, loosely bound with a gold clip. Everything about it would scream opportunity. At exactly 2:45 p.m., he would recline on the velvet sofa, shirt sleeves rolled just enough to show the cufflinks that gleamed like bait. His eyes would close, his breathing would slow. A camera hidden behind the framed portrait of his late mother would capture every movement. He would pretend to sleep, but his mind would be wide awake, calculating, dissecting. The test would reveal what kind of person Elena really was when she thought no one was watching. Ethan rehearsed every detail in his mind. The angle of his arm, the way the money should look accidentally left out, the path she usually took while cleaning the room. He wanted no flaws in the setup. Lucas shifted uncomfortably near the door. "Ethan, maybe this isn't necessary. The staff likes her. Margaret says she's honest. Maybe you still believe people are what they seem." Ethan interrupted. "I used to think that too. Then I learned better." His voice was quiet but sharp enough to cut the room in half. The memory of that first betrayal still burned under his skin. The maid who once tucked him in, kissed his forehead, then vanished with everything his family owned. Kindness had a price, and Ethan had paid it. Now, he was collecting interest. When morning came, the estate moved as usual, unaware of the performance about to unfold. Staff members whispered down the hallways. Silver trays clinked, and the world went on pretending it was ordinary. At 2:40 p.m., Ethan descended from his office in silence. The grand staircase stretched before him like a stage. He adjusted his cuffs, checked his reflection once, and entered the living room. He placed the wallet on the table, the watch beside it, and the stack of bills exactly 3 inches away. Then he lay back on the sofa and closed his eyes. For a moment, the silence was perfect again. The hum of the air conditioner, the distant chime of a clock, the faint echo of his own heartbeat. He waited. Somewhere beyond the doorway, soft footsteps approached, the kind that barely touched the ground. He recognized them instantly. Elena? Ethan slowed his breathing, muscles tightening beneath stillness. The test had begun. And for the first time in years, Ethan Langford felt something he did not expect to feel at all. Not control, not power, fear. Not of being stolen from, but of being wrong. Because if she proved him wrong, he would have to face a truth he'd buried long ago. That not every quiet soul hides deceit. Some hide kindness. And kindness was the one thing he no longer knew how to handle. The mansion was silent again. The kind of silence that made even the ticking clock sound like thunder. Ethan Langford lay on the velvet sofa, motionless, pretending to sleep. His hand hung loosely off the edge, his wrist glinting with the light from his cufflinks. Every breath he took was measured, every blink suppressed. He had built empires through discipline, and now he used that same precision to trap a single woman. The test had begun. A faint sound drifted in from the hallway. Soft steps, light, careful, almost hesitant. Elena Brooks. Her reflection appeared briefly on the glass door before she entered the room. She moved the way sunlight does through curtains, quiet but impossible to ignore. A gray dress, white apron, blonde hair tied back neatly, though a few strands had escaped to frame her face. She paused at the doorway. The table stood just a few feet from her, and on it, temptation waited like a coiled snake, a thick stack of $100 bills, a gold money clip, a leather wallet, and an elegant watch. Ethan heard the silent stretch. She saw it. Seconds passed. He could almost feel her breath, could almost hear the tiny shift of her shoes against the floor. Then came the faintest sigh. Elena moved not toward the table, but behind the sofa. She began dusting the baseboards with steady, deliberate motions. Her cloth glided across wood and marble as if she were erasing the air itself. She hummed softly, a tune too gentle to recognize. Ethan's jaw tightened. She was ignoring it, ignoring the bait. He forced his chest to rise and fall in the rhythm of fake sleep. Inside, his pulse drummed with impatience. What was she thinking? Why didn't she even glance again? And then, she did. Her movement slowed. Her gaze flicked toward the table, to the wallet and the money. He felt it, the shift in her breathing, the pause in her hand. 3 seconds? 4, 5. Would she do it? The sound of a soft cloth brushing across the table reached him. He waited for the touch of a hand, for the quiet shuffle of paper. Instead, there was the sound of a book being lifted from the nearby shelf. She placed it carefully directly over the stack of money, as if she was shielding it from the world. No hesitation, no guilt, just simple, protective care. Ethan's breath caught. His heart gave a dull, heavy thud against his ribs. Elena stood still for a moment, looking at him. The faintest hint of worry touched her expression, not for herself, but for the man she believed was sleeping. She crossed the room quietly and picked up a folded throw blanket from the armchair and walked back to him. Her steps were so gentle they barely stirred the air. He could have opened his eyes, could have spoken, could have ended the game. But something held him frozen. Elena leaned down, unfolding the blanket with careful grace, and draped it across his chest. The fabric's warmth brushed his skin, and for a man who built his life on walls and distance, that small touch felt devastatingly human. She hesitated, then brushed a lock of hair from his forehead. Her fingertips lingered for the smallest second. Her voice, when it came, was a whisper softer than breath. "Thank you for trusting me. I won't let you down." Then she turned away, gathered her cleaning cloth, and quietly left the room. Ethan lay still long after she was gone. His eyes burned. The air felt different, heavier, warmer. For years, he had watched people chase power, money, validation. But this woman, this silent ghost of grace, had just shown him something he had forgotten existed. Loyalty without witness, kindness without reward. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Langford didn't feel in control. He just felt human. Ethan Langford had built his life on numbers, contracts, and unshakable logic. Yet that night, logic failed him. He sat alone in his office, the lights dim, the only glow coming from the security monitor in front of him. On the screen, Elena Brooks moved silently across the living room, frozen in grayscale. He pressed replay again and again, every gesture, every pause, every breath. He couldn't stop watching. The book covering the money, the blanket across his chest, the whisper. None of it made sense. No angle, no motive, just pure instinct. When the footage ended, Ethan leaned back, staring at the dark ceiling. For the first time in years, the silence in his mansion didn't feel peaceful. It felt alive, watching him back. The next morning, he found himself doing something unusual. He didn't summon anyone, didn't check his schedule, didn't open his laptop. He simply watched, quietly. That was when he started to see what he had missed before. In the driveway, under the oak trees, the old chauffeur, Walter, had fallen asleep in the Rolls-Royce, his glasses slipping down his nose. Elena appeared beside the car, holding a folded blanket. She opened the door gently, careful not to wake him, and tucked it around his shoulders. Then she adjusted it so it wouldn't slide off. No one saw it. No one thanked her. She just smiled faintly, closed the door, and walked away. Later that day, Ethan walked through the west corridor and stopped dead in his tracks. On the wall hung a photo of his mother, once dusty, ignored, half hidden behind a vase. Now it gleamed under the morning light, the silver frame polished, the glass spotless. He didn't remember telling anyone to clean it. In fact, he hadn't looked at it in years. But someone had. Someone who noticed what others missed. Someone who cared about what no one else touched. He moved closer and saw something written in delicate handwriting on a small folded note beside the vase. They left extra fruit in the fridge for Mrs. Harris. She mentioned craving peaches. At the bottom, there was no signature, only a tiny drawing of a flower. Ethan stared at it for a long time. The words blurry. He felt something twist deep inside him, something fragile and unfamiliar. Later that evening, as the staff cleared the dining hall, he stayed behind, watching from the shadows. Elena was stacking plates, quiet as always. She moved with rhythm, not grace meant for show, but the kind that came from someone who found peace in small things. When a glass nearly slipped from the tray, she caught it mid-air with surprising steadiness. Her face softened with a small, private smile, like she was proud of the silence she had protected. Ethan felt a strange heaviness in his chest. Not guilt, not admiration. Something in between. For years, he had dismissed kindness as a weakness, a luxury for people who didn't know betrayal. But now, he began to see it differently. Kindness wasn't weakness. It was endurance. It survived where trust had died. Elena's quiet presence was reshaping the house itself. He noticed fewer arguments among the staff, fewer complaints. Even the air felt lighter. When he passed through the halls at night, there were faint traces of her touch everywhere. Curtains tied neatly, a flower tucked into a vase, the smell of lavender lingering near the staircase. She never asked for acknowledgement, never waited for praise. She just made things right and moved on. Ethan finally turned off the monitor and stared at his reflection in the dark glass. It struck him that Elena Brooks had changed the entire atmosphere of the Langford estate without saying a single word. And for a man who had always believed silence was emptiness, he was beginning to realize that sometimes silence speaks louder than anything else. The Langford estate shimmered that afternoon with the kind of perfection that money could buy. Crystal glasses clinked, polished silver caught the light, and laughter rolled through the air like perfume. But beneath the luxury, tension waited like a live wire. Ethan Langford stood near the head of the long dining table, entertaining a circle of investors and social elites. Among them was Veronica Cresswood, 50, elegant, ruthless, a woman whose smile was as sharp as her diamonds. She had always admired Ethan's wealth more than his soul. The calm shattered with her voice. "Excuse me," Veronica called out. Her tone dipped in theatrical disgust. She held something between two manicured fingers. "Someone seems to have left this behind." The chatter died instantly. Every eye turned. Dangling from her hand was a white handkerchief, embroidered with a small crooked flower, faintly scented with lavender. "It was under Mr. Duval's chair," she continued, her lips curling. "A rather delicate perfume. Almost intentional, wouldn't you say?" A ripple of whispers traveled through the guests. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Veronica," he said evenly, "it's probably nothing." She laughed softly. "Nothing? At my age, I can recognize certain tricks. A handkerchief left in the right place, the right scent, it speaks volumes." He felt heat crawl up his neck. The moment was venomous, public, humiliating. Before he could speak again, Margaret, the head housekeeper, appeared beside him, pale and nervous. "Sir," she whispered, "the handkerchief belongs to Elena." The words hit harder than he expected. "Call her," he ordered. Moments later, Elena Brooks appeared in the doorway, her gray dress still crisp from her morning rounds, her eyes lowered but steady. The guests watched her like a scene unfolding. "Is this yours?" Ethan asked, voice low. Elena glanced at the handkerchief. The small embroidered flower was unmistakable. "Yes," she said softly. "It must have fallen from my pocket while I was cleaning." Veronica scoffed. "How convenient." Elena said nothing. Ethan stepped closer. "Were you trying to get someone's attention?" Her head snapped up. "No." The word came out sharp, then softened. "No, sir." "Then why didn't you speak up when you were accused?" Her hands trembled slightly, fingers clutching her apron. She hesitated before answering. "Because it wouldn't matter." The room seemed to stop breathing. Ethan frowned. "What do you mean it wouldn't matter?" Elena swallowed hard. Her voice came out small, cracked around the edges. "I've been accused before." You could hear the hush fall over the room like snow. "I used to work at a nursing home," she said slowly. "There was a man there, Mr. Ellis. He collapsed one night. The ambulance was late, so I gave him my blood. It saved him." Her voice wavered, but she forced herself to continue. "A few days later, someone reported a gold cross missing from his drawer. They found it in the laundry cart I used. I didn't take it. I don't even know how it got there." She looked down, eyes glassy. "They didn't ask. They just let me go." Ethan stood frozen. The edges of the room blurred. The people, the noise, the walls all dissolved into the quiet between them. "Since then," she whispered, "when people accuse me, I don't defend myself. I just leave. It's easier. People believe what they want. Her words cut through him like a blade. Every defense he had ever built crumbled in that moment. He stepped forward, his voice barely above a whisper. You don't have to explain anything else. Not to me. He picked up the handkerchief and pressed it gently into her hand. I was wrong, he said, and I'm sorry. Elena's composure broke. Her lips trembled as tears spilled quietly down her face. Not the tears of fear, but of something deeper. Relief. She nodded, clutching the small piece of fabric like a lifeline. In a house where suspicion ruled, kindness had just found a way to speak. The morning after the scandal, Langford Estate was quiet again, but not the peaceful kind. It was the silence that follows a storm, heavy and uncertain. Ethan Langford woke before sunrise, the weight of guilt sitting like a stone on his chest. He had watched Elena Brooks walk away from the dining hall the day before, holding her handkerchief like it was the last piece of dignity she owned. He had apologized in front of everyone, but the words had felt too small, too late. Apologies fix nothing when trust has been cracked open. By mid-morning, Ethan found her in the back corridor, folding linens with mechanical precision. Her eyes were calm, but something behind them had retreated. She looked smaller somehow, like a light dimmed. Walk with me, he said quietly. She hesitated, then nodded. They crossed the courtyard in silence, the gravel crunching beneath their feet. Ethan led her through a narrow gate at the edge of the garden, one so overgrown with ivy it looked forgotten by time. The hinges groaned as he pushed it open. Inside lay a hidden world, the secret garden, his mother's sanctuary. Wild roses crawled up the stone walls, untamed and beautiful. Ivy draped the old trellis like a green curtain. The air was thick with the smell of jasmine and damp earth. It was a place untouched since the day his mother died. Elena stopped in awe. It's beautiful, she whispered. Ethan's voice was low. It used to be hers. My mother, she loved this garden more than anything. I locked it after the funeral and never came back. He turned toward her, his gaze steady but vulnerable. Until today. Elena looked uncertain. Why bring me here? He exhaled slowly. Because I owe you more than words. You reminded me what this place meant. My mother used to say that gardens listen better than people. I think she was right. He walked a few steps ahead, brushing his hand against the leaves. I've spent years believing that good people always speak up. That silence meant guilt. But you showed me something else. He faced her again, his eyes softer than she had ever seen them. You showed me that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's what's left after someone's been hurt too many times. Elena blinked, her throat tightening. I thought strength meant control. Ethan continued. But you proved it can mean compassion. You didn't defend yourself, yet somehow you still protected everyone else, even me. For a long moment, they just stood there among the wildflowers, the air humming with unsaid things. Ethan glanced around, then smiled faintly. This garden belonged to my mother. Today? It belongs to you too. Elena froze, unsure she had heard correctly. To me? He nodded. Because you've done what no one else could. You brought peace back into this house, into me. The words hit her like sunlight breaking through clouds. She had lived her life being invisible, useful but unseen. Now, standing there surrounded by life and color, she felt something shift inside her. Her voice trembled. I don't know what to say. Ethan smiled. You don't have to. He reached down and picked a single white rose, its petals soft and trembling. He held it out to her. Just promise me one thing. Don't let this world convince you to stop being kind. Elena accepted the flower, fingers brushing his. I won't, she whispered. The wind moved through the leaves like a sigh, gentle and forgiving, for the first time since his mother's death. Ethan felt the garden breathe again, and for the first time in years, He didn't feel like the man who owned the house. He felt like someone finally living inside it. Something began to shift inside Langford Estate. It started quietly, like light seeping through the cracks of an old wall. The tension that once haunted the halls began to fade, replaced by something unfamiliar, warmth. Ethan Langford was changing, and everyone could feel it. He no longer ate alone in the grand dining room. Instead, he joined the staff for breakfast in the side kitchen, where laughter echoed against tiled walls. The first morning he walked in, the entire room froze. No one knew whether to stand or sit. Ethan simply poured himself a cup of tea, looked at them, and said, "Carry on." Then he turned to Elena. "Do you take sugar?" She blinked, caught off guard. "Just a little." He handed her the cup. That single gesture sent ripples through the room. For years, the mansion had been divided by invisible lines. But that morning, one of them disappeared. From then on, he joined them every few days. He listened more, spoke less, and sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, he smiled. Later, Ethan called Elena into the library. The room stretched 2 stories high, filled with leather-bound books that smelled of dust and time. "I'm having the collection recatalogued," he said, standing near the tall windows. "Some of these books should be repaired or donated. I'd like you to decide which." Elena stared at him in disbelief. "Me?" He nodded. "I trust your judgment." The words sank deep. No one had ever said them to her before. She began spending her afternoons there, labeling, sorting, and reading snippets of poetry aloud when she thought she was alone. Sometimes, Ethan would linger by the doorway, listening to her soft voice weaving through the quiet. He never interrupted. He just let the sound settle into him. Each day, the estate grew different. The air seemed lighter, the staff friendlier, even the garden brighter. One late afternoon, as the sun spilled gold through the windows, Ethan walked toward the garden. He stopped when he heard laughter, clear, warm, real. He followed the sound and saw her. Elena stood beside George, the elderly gardener, her hands covered in soil. She was holding a watering can, helping him tend to the rose bushes near the stone bench. There was dirt on her cheek, a smudge on her apron, and a glow in her smile that outshone everything else. George said something, and she laughed again, wiping sweat from her forehead. Then she said something that made Ethan freeze. "If I can bring peace to someone's day, even just by watering flowers or cleaning a window, then I think that's a life worth living." He stopped breathing for a second. It wasn't dramatic or rehearsed. It was simple, honest. The kind of truth that sneaks past logic and goes straight to the heart. He stayed hidden behind the ivy, watching her. The woman he had once tested, doubted, and accused was now teaching him what peace looked like. For the first time in his life, Ethan Langford understood the difference between control and harmony. Control was cold, harmony was alive, and somewhere between those two, love had quietly taken root. That evening, he stood by the library window, staring out at the garden where Elena had laughed. The glass reflected his face back at him, a man softer, humbler, changed. He thought of her words again, the simplicity of them, the power inside them. A life worth living. He whispered it aloud, tasting the meaning. For once, it didn't sound like a question. It sounded like the beginning of an answer. The rain came without warning. It fell hard and fast, drumming against the glass walls of Langford Estate like fists demanding entry. The wind howled through the trees, bending branches until they cracked. Thunder rolled across the hills, shaking the chandeliers. Then, in an instant, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the mansion. Ethan Langford stood in the main hall, listening to the storm rage outside. A flash of lightning illuminated the marble floor, and for a split second, he saw his own reflection alone, cold and tired of pretending that solitude was strength. Then he saw movement at the end of the corridor. A faint glow flickered near the kitchen wing. Ethan grabbed a flashlight and followed it. Water dripped from the ceiling as he turned the corner, his shoes echoing through the emptiness. There she was. Elena Brooks stood by the window, pressing a dish towel against a cracked pane where rain was pouring in. Her hair clung to her face, her dress soaked through, her arms trembling from the chill. The storm outside raged, but she stayed rooted, shielding the house with her own body. Ethan froze. For a moment, he didn't see a maid. He saw someone quietly fighting the chaos he had long stopped trying to control. "Elena," he called softly. She turned, startled, her face flushed from the cold. "I'm sorry, sir. The window broke. I was trying to stop the water from—" He stepped forward, removing his jacket without a word, and draped it round her shoulders. The warmth of the fabric made her shiver harder. "Come on," he said quietly. "You'll catch a cold." She hesitated. "But the water—" "Forget the water." His tone left no room for argument. He took her hand, firm but gentle, and guided her down the hall to the small emergency kitchen, one of the few places where a faint amber light from the backup generator still glowed. The air was warmer there, filled with the faint scent of tea and damp wood. Ethan poured water into 2 mismatched mugs. Neither of them spoke at first. The sound of rain against the glass was steady, relentless. Finally, he looked at her. "Why did you stay?" Elena blinked, confused. "Stay?" He nodded slowly. "You could have left after everything, after how this house treated you, after how I treated you." She stared into the flickering light, her hands wrapped around the mug for warmth. Her voice came out soft, almost trembling. "Because this place needs me." He frowned slightly. "The house?" She lifted her eyes to his. "No, the people in it. The ones still hurting but pretending they're not." The words hit him like the crack of lightning outside. He looked away, jaw tight. She wasn't accusing him, but he felt seen in a way he never wanted to be. He whispered, "And what if that person doesn't know how to stop pretending?" Elena's expression softened. She took a small step closer. "Then maybe they don't have to stop. They just have to let someone stand with them while they try." The silence between them thickened, heavy but alive. The light flickered again, tracing the outlines of their faces, her damp cheeks, his tired eyes. Ethan's hand moved almost without thought. He reached up and brushed a strand of wet hair from her face, his fingers trembling slightly. His palm lingered against her cheek, feeling the warmth beneath the cold. It wasn't desire. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. For years, he had built walls made of logic and fear. Now, in a storm-lit kitchen with a soaked maid holding a chipped mug, those walls began to fall. Elena didn't move. She looked up at him with eyes that saw right through the man and into the wound he hid. He didn't say another word. Neither did she. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, for the first time, Ethan Langford felt warmth that wasn't from the fire or the lights. It came from a touch, and from finally being seen. The Langford Foundation Charity Gala shimmered beneath strings of golden light. Music drifted through the air, laughter mingled with crystal, and elegance painted every corner. Yet, at the heart of it all, one woman moved quietly through the crowd. Elena Brooks. For the first time, Ethan Langford had trusted her to oversee everything, the seating, the service, the rhythm of the night. It all flowed perfectly under her calm direction. She belonged there, not as staff, but as the quiet soul that kept the event alive. When Ethan took the stage, the room fell silent. "I have spoken about wealth, ambition, and legacy before," he said, his voice steady. "But tonight, I want to speak about something greater. Kindness. The person who taught me that true goodness needs no spotlight is here among us. You may not see her, but her light is everywhere.